Hi, welcome back. This time I hardly even want to ask the question, This new moon snuck right on up. I was spinning pretty wildly after the full moon. I had so many questions. I was going to solve so many problems. I started writing the podcast script a week and a half ago. And now I go back to it and it just seems like a whole different world. I don't have the same questions that I had. I feel the incredible darkness of the season. And it feels like, have we moved into the still point? I know solstice really is the still point, the turning point. But something about right now feels still and quiet, staring into the void. And it's so intense, that quiet stillness, that the questions can't approach. It's like there's boundaries around the questions. And I think it's because the questions aren't appropriate to the stillness. And I sort of want to give you a real-time example. So let's imagine that I'm going to give you 3 chances to have all of your answers given to you, like just handed right over to you. And so in the next 15 minutes or so, half an hour or so, I am going to answer questions that you have. And given that, knowing that, what would you like to know about? What do you want to know about if you know the answers are waiting for you? And I proposed myself this. I actually do it a lot, but I was having a tarot card reading and I asked myself, what do I want to know about? And I had a whole list of questions that I don't have in front of me. They're questions like, what am I going to be when I grow up? Am I going to be a movie star? Can I have a puppy? Those were the kinds of questions that I was asking. Those are the kinds of questions that are at the top layer. They're sort of first layer questions, kind of get the gunk out of the way. And those kinds of questions are what I'm pointing out are not appropriate to the stillness of the moment. So the stillness of this moment feels like a time to rest and maybe allow questions to approach rather than having to force and pull and nudge and make questions take up a space that they're not ready for yet. So I say, ask all of the dumb questions, like my questions. And no question is a dumb question. I don't mean that. But ask the questions that really aren't what you're asking. Try to get them out of the way, sort of like a sweeping clear of the question process. So I still want to know, if you have 3 questions, kind of like having 3 wishes, what do you wish for? What do you wonder about? What do you want to know? Really, really, really. My first question, what is going on anyway? I don't even know if I want to ask that this time. That's why I started with not wanting to ask that question. It's like I'm more interested in the quiet, in the dark, in the stillness than getting answers to these big questions of living and life and what are we here for? I think sometimes that's what I'm asking when I say, what is going on anyway? I have big questions about, why are we here? The promise of modernity is not panning out for most of us. There are too many bigger questions around justice, ecological justice, and financial justice. And the modern age was supposed to bring ease and liberation and equality to all. And it has not panned out that way. And I think we're feeling a lot of inner and outer strife around that. So maybe the question I'm asking more right now is, how do we navigate these times that feel like they're kind of crumbling and also being rebuilt all at once? How do we create the vessel or fortify our own human body vessel to withstand such times as we are living in? So, what is going on anyway? Hello, I'm your host, Anne Headley, and this is my podcast where I contemplate the current moon. This time it's a new moon in Sagittarius, the new cold moon of this season. Here I use my intuition and imagination to share with you a story about this moment now. And as I wonder about universal themes showing up for us through these different seasons and phases, I discover a richness in the simplicity of paying attention to life as it is, to me as I am. And I'm so glad that you're here with me. Thank you for taking the time to wonder with me. I'm going to ask you again to go back to those 3 questions, and maybe those 3 questions are really just one question. And maybe the reason you're here is because you also wonder, what is going on anyway? And maybe that's your question, and that's enough. I think it's okay that I go back right now and read to you some of what I wrote a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a couple of weeks ago. It was probably 6 days ago. And the question that I started with is, I'm asking you who and what you want to save you. Most of us have, even if we can't point directly to it, we have an idea of something outside of ourselves that should save us, and that we can offer a little bit of blame in that direction. Sometimes it's a person. Sometimes it's an entity or a group of people. Who and what are you looking to save you? I think that needs investigating right now. And this was closer to the election. I haven't had this question in my mind exactly around this new moon, so I'm just telling you that because this feels like the question before the question, but I'm going to keep going here. So, the president is not going to save you. And the president was never going to save you. And weirdly, as I think about president, your dad, whether he was present or absent or emotionally there or not emotionally there, your dad was never going to save you. And if you're a parent like me, you know that we're too busy trying to figure things out to save anyone. I know some parents out there who might be like, yes, I am surely going to save my children. I'm going to purify them and educate them. And when I say purify, I mean like we're going to have the most wonderful diet, and we are going to limit screen time, and we are going to have the most delicate and perfect education that will not taint those growing brains, that kind of purification. I think most parents can, or at least the ones who were the stay-at-home parents can identify with that. So that idea, I'm going to purify them and educate them and mold them into perfection, and that will be a kind of salvation. And maybe it's unwrapping salvation that is what could be looked at here. I love Krista Tippett's On Being. I mean, if I could take over for her over there, that's my dream job, I think. it seems like a dream job, and maybe that's a top tier level question, and there's deeper things to go to. But to talk to people and interview people about their experience with spirituality is high level on my wish list, I think. She begins, if you don't know her on Being, I do recommend it, but if you don't ever want to listen to it, she begins her interviews with a question about what is your spiritual background and how did you learn about spiritual things as a child? What is it exactly that she says, though? Hang on a sec. Okay, she's asked, and I've heard her ask it differently, but this is one way that she's asked. I'm curious about how you would begin to talk about the religious or spiritual background of your childhood, however you think of that. I'm actually curious if you'd just take a second and think about that for yourself. How would you begin to talk about the religious or spiritual background of your childhood? As a young child, I went to was it a Baptist church? I don't even know enough. It was Christian church. That's how. And then my parents left that church, never to return to another church. They were incredibly spiritual people, and they did a lot of study, and they sort of had a group that they did many different kind of studies with, that, was, oh my gosh, I obviously don't know how to answer this question if I was being interviewed by Krista Tippett. And it's not that I don't know how to answer the question. I just want to be thoughtful about how I answer the question. My parents were incredibly studious in their quest for truth and understanding. My father was even more, I think, of a scholar of the Bible and questioning the Bible. He knew it pretty well. I felt a little sad when he died, like I couldn't ask him questions about the Bible anymore. He was one of the folks that invited the Jehovah's Witnesses inside and would have long conversations with them about the Bible. And, the Nag Hammadi scriptures that were, I always tend to bite off more than I can chew here. I had to go get this. I have this book that's called the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, the revised and updated translations of sacred Gnostic texts. And I'm going to read you the back if you've never heard of these before. The year is 1945. At the foot of a cliff along the Nile River, near the city of Nag Hammadi, an Egyptian peasant unearths a large storage jar containing ancient manuscripts. The discovery turns out to be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the past century. A treasure of 4th century texts, the manuscripts are the scriptures of the ancient mystical tradition commonly known as Gnosticism, from the Greek gnosis, that is, secret knowledge. It is a discovery that challenges everything we thought we knew about the early Christian church, ancient Judaism, and Greco-Roman religions. Some people call these the Dead Sea Scrolls. And if you have never read them, they're really beautiful. And when I discovered these, I thought, oh, that's something that I could rest inside of, that kind of Christianity. So it opened up my understanding a little bit, because my early Christian education was, I guess I went to like vacation Bible school, but mostly I went to church with other families. So I know I went to the Methodist church a lot, and I went to the Episcopal church. I went to the Lutheran church with a friend. I went to the Unitarian Universalist church as a teenager. I went to the Catholic church. I did not like the Catholic church, you guys. It was time. I was used to the Methodist church, and at the Methodist church, they'll feed you, like they don't care. You go up and you can take communion there. Everybody went up. And at the Catholic church, it was time for communion. I was like, I know how to do this. And I stood up, and then there was a lady at the edge of the aisle, and she was like, no, sit down. Like, not you. It was just the worst feeling. So because I was not, what do you call it? I didn't marry Jesus in the church. I was not confirmed. Is that what it is? I could not have communion in the Catholic Church. So I had this interesting childhood of getting along with, going with friends and other families to see how a lot of different people did it. I didn't go to black churches in town. I wish I had that experience, but we were pretty segregated in the 70s and 80s in Virginia, and that would have been a little bit outside of the norm, so that would have been exceptional, although that would have been really nice. Let me come back around. Back to a little story. I had a Lutheran friend, close friend, and we were young enough to be outside playing. And there was this foundation that my dad was building for our Sunspace addition. He had laid these bricks, and the inside was filled with dirt. And there was I guess that was going to be poured with concrete, but it wasn't yet. And we were jumping. This doesn't matter to my story. I should edit it out, but that was just the scene. It was warm outside. We were jumping off of this 2.5 foot foundation onto the ground over and over again. So that sets the scene. I'm not sure exactly how we got onto this conversation, but I said, I'm not sure I believe in Jesus. He might be like Santa Claus. And she absolutely stopped in her tracks. Tears came to her eyes. And she said, but Anne, if you don't believe in Jesus, we can't be together in heaven. And she was crying real tears. And I was just wanting to talk, like philosophically maybe, for a 9 or 10-year-old. And I backpedaled as she became more and more distressed. And finally, she asked if I would come talk to her pastor, like almost out of breath, scared for me. And I said, maybe I said yes at the time to try to pacify her. But I knew absolutely I did not want to do that. The image of being called to the principal's office was surrounding me, the idea of being called to her pastor's office. And I felt like I would be told how it was, and that I should be good and stop my wandering mind. But what I really wanted to ask, and what I really wanted to know was, what do we know about Jesus really? And how do we trust the Bible when we know it was written by people? So then when I learned about the Dead Sea Scrolls, I was like, see, the Bible doesn't even include everything. Like, there's more? Who decides what gets added and who benefits from the Bible being edited? So I just love information, and I can't believe that people would be satisfied with one set of information when there's more available. And I guess what I wonder is, like, why aren't Christians historians, and why aren't people more interested in figuring things out like me? And why would I take the word of a pastor? So, what it comes down to is, like, still, nobody knows what's going on anyway. So why do we act like we do know what's going on anyway? Why? Why? So lots of questions of why. And this might be a perfect time to read you a random passage from the Nag Hammadi scriptures. This is the Gospel of Philip, truth and nakedness. Truth did not come into the world naked, but in symbols and images. The world cannot receive truth in any other way. And here's another that I just really like. She has found her rising. She has come to rest in the one who is at rest. She has reclined in the bridal chamber. She has eaten of the banquet, for which she has hungered. She has partaken of immortal food. She has found what she has sought. She has received rest from her labors, and the light shining on her does not set. To the light belongs the glory and the power and the revelation forever and ever. Amen. When I was reading that, I was thinking about this moment of facing the darkness. And tonight is the new moon, and it is an incredibly gorgeous night sky out there right now. It's very dark and very quiet. And I like the idea of approaching this dark and quiet time. And I know this is just the Northern Hemisphere, but let's just pretend like all of everything is right here with me. And it's all quiet everywhere. This deep quiet that I am experiencing right now is giving me the opportunity to look at some of the questions that rest under the surface for me. And rather than going into those questions, because that's too challenging for me in this moment, I'm going to give you a little tiny exercise that I think maybe I've shared before, but it's a good one. I took this online course with Sophie Strand, and one of our exercises was to make a list of 50 daily necessary words in my ecosystem. And it's really interesting. If you want to do it, I'm going to read you some of mine. Maybe I'll read you my 50. And they change. And some are more essential and less essential. But if you had 50 words to choose from that had value and meaning to you, what would you choose? Water, touch, walk, stone, inside, outside, sleep, rest, sun, dog, cat, love, fire, paper, trash, bed, field, river, brook, phone, computer, pen, bird, dark, stars, light, cozy, pain, car, time, garden, soil, tools, food, store, neighbors, wind, rain, snow, ice, books, studio, yoga, bath, friends, city, distance, ancestors, spring, sky. And that's 50. And then I had mushrooms, memory, dark, hurting, far away. And there's many, it would be sort of interesting, like, those magnets, those poetry magnets. Wouldn't it be interesting to have your 50 words kind of like interchangeable, just as an exercise, as a poetic way of being in relationship with words in your life? What are the things that are important? What are the actual words that you use over and over again? Curiously, we're entering a time where we could use an assistant to do those things for us. And of course, problematically, but I like to look on the bright side. Always look on the bright side of life. Doo-doo. I know AI is incredibly problematic. I know that surveillance is incredibly problematic. I think I know. And yet, it's interesting to wonder about if you had someone helping you with your questions, would your questions be better? Let me see if I can share this really quickly. I was really struggling about making a decision, and I had a very short time period to make the decision. It was a time-sensitive thing. Was I going to go somewhere? Was I not going to go somewhere? And I was just like, I don't know. And so I used Claude, free Claude. And Claude is an AI that you can use online like ChatGPT. So I was using Claude and I said, look, I've got to make a quick decision. What do I do? And Claude was amazing, totally amazing, and reflective and informative, and was like, this is why you might want to do it for this, this, and this reason. And I can totally understand why you wouldn't want to do it for this, this, and this reason. And if you do want to do it, that's okay. I can understand that. If you don't want to do it, that's totally understandable. And you could maybe do this that would make you feel better about not doing it. I mean, it was freaking amazing and helpful. And I wanted Claude in my life. That's all I want to go. That's as far as I want to go, because I can hear these little bird song, people thoughts. I can hear the questions about what do we want to do with AI in our life. But I do think maybe we should look at how could it benefit us given that it's here. And I also totally understand wanting to opt out. I'm not smart enough. And I don't understand enough about why I have been just on this roller coaster. I did not keep my kids out of technology. I just said, I'm going to risk it. And so that's sort of how I'm acting with AI. I'm going to risk it. Maybe this is a conversation to have at another point. I keep having these thoughts that maybe really the evolution of this podcast is to actually talk to people who know, rather than having me spin tales in my little closet here. But that would be another day. That is not today. I actually want to circle back to what I was thinking about a week ago. I had a conversation with a friend who has a different political leaning to me. We politely didn't mention who exactly we voted for. And in the state of Maine, we usually go blue, and we have ranked choice voting. And as a woman, I'm going to vote for a woman that supports a woman's right to choose her own medical decisions. That's just a deep belief that I want men to stop deciding how I use my own body. And that comes from centuries of misogyny. It's just time to give it up. People are people, and men don't have special brain cells that makes them better at deciding how things should go. I'm just not at all interested in supporting that idea. The old model would be that I would find the man who has the best ideas and then stand in line behind him. But I'm just not feeling that anymore. And this brings me to Joe Rogan. Because when I have conversations with Trump-supporting people in my life, they bring him up. I'm like, what is it about Joe Rogan? I'm not a listener, so I really don't know. I thought I was going to get to the bottom of it, but I kind of looked into it, listened to him a bit, asked some questions, and then it kind of stopped being a question for me anymore. But what I suspected, this is what I wrote down, I suspect he gives off the feeling of having the answers and being somebody who can speak to many questions. I think he gives political and nutritional advice. He covers all the bases, makes folks feel comfortable, and lets them rest already. They can just listen to him and he will do all the figuring out. That's what I suspect, but I don't know. I'll have to go look and see. But before I go look, I want to tell you about my conversation. I sat for hours, I think it was 3 hours, maybe 4 hours, talking to my friend who is a Trump supporter and a Joe Rogan fan. And he is and was more than willing to have a very long and heartfelt conversation with me. I asked him also about his spiritual awakening, which he mentioned as we were talking. And he described it as having a moment where something shifted in his heart. He could feel where he couldn't feel previously. He could feel through his heart. And after that, nothing was exactly the same for him. This, him being, all of these things are just facts. I'm not trying to say that this is everybody that does this is this. But what I'm wondering about is that is salvation, right? If you go kind of esoterically spiritual, the Christ consciousness is living through the heart, which is an awakened fourth chakra. This is also the home of Buddha and Muhammad and Rumi and Hafiz. I never quite myself understood accepting, I say this in quotations, or I write this in quotations, accepting Jesus into your heart. I didn't understand that. Like, I didn't understand just saying, I welcome Jesus as my Lord and Savior. I didn't think it didn't resonate for me. And maybe it is as simple as that. I don't know. I don't think I had a question about living in my heart or feeling. I didn't have a problem feeling my feelings. Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Rumi, Walt Whitman, E.E. Cummings, Mary Oliver, all of these folks give insight into that space in the heart. So I don't know. I still don't feel like it has to be, we have to choose one of these humans. Obviously, I don't understand enough. And that's okay with me. But one of the things that seems to be that driving force, and that I was feeling from childhood, from my Lutheran friend who was going to save me, is this sense that salvation is something that we can attain. And this is where the difference between transcendence and immanence hits me in the gut. There's this need for transcendence, and I'm wondering about immanence. Immanence being God is in everything, if we take the time to look. So I'm sitting over here more comfortably in the arms of wanting to investigate immanence rather than strive after transcendence and some future salvation. And all of this comes back around. I'm trying to circle back around. Thank you so much for sticking with me as I try to circle back around. And I'm circling back to this idea that the president is not my salvation. Joe Rogan is not my salvation. The only thing that I can look to, I think, is myself and believing that I belong here and that it's going to take all of us, that there isn't one person who's going to come up with a plan that's going to save us, but that we must weave ourselves together, and that weaving together creates the strength that we need to get through hard times. It's probably always been true, but maybe really important to highlight right now. How do I weave myself with my people, with my community, with the folks that are interested in the same things that I'm interested in? I had this astrology reading. It was really wonderful. And one of the questions was, rather than thinking that you have to do something alone and independently in order to be successful, what if you found other people that were interested in the things that you want to be successful at and join forces and see what happens when you find other people who want to do the same things that you want to do, that you're not like rewriting the way of doing things, but you're gathering together. And in that sense, weaving together with other folks to find kind of fulfillment in life. What if there is no kingdom come? What if the kingdom is not coming? What if it is here? And it requires us every day to look at who we are, ask good and better questions, heal ourselves and others, eat, create, make art, build community. Okay, so those were my questions of 5 days ago, halfway through this point of full to new moon. And today, as I rest with the new moon, there's a lot more quiet in my mind. If we are at a new point, new moons are great times to start things, right? We know this. What if we're starting something fresh? And we're starting and we just are stepping forward into the warm unknown. I say warm because I personally am a little afraid of the dark. I've talked about that before, right? Like I've talked about staring at the stars and being in so much awe, and then all of a sudden this like, I don't know what this is. Like this is overwhelming. The hugeness of the universe overwhelms me and I get a little scared. So I say, as I sit here in this still place, in the still point, could I imagine stepping into a warm unknown, like a womb space? And that it's okay to not be able to imagine what is beyond that. Because this point of wandering around in the dark matters. Okay, let's get back to your first question. Do you remember? Or just think of a question. And this is going to be a bit open-ended. This is not a yes or no. So first question, and I pulled an animal spirit card. Again, we're back to Kim Krantz. Ooh! I'm so excited. Okay. How much time do I have? I have as much time as I want, don't I? We got the owl. And today, Jason and I were driving to do the grocery shopping. We don't grocery shop together because I have a home with 3 boys and he often shares food with me, but we don't share groceries. He's got his space, I've got mine, and we've got 2 fridges, and that's the way it is, and it's lovely. So we're going to do grocery shopping, together and separately. I don't even know why I need to tell you that. I don't need to tell you that. However, as we were driving, I was driving, we just crested the hill, Blueberry Hill, at Blueberry Hill Lane. Is it Blueberry Lane? Anyway, and flying in front of us was the most distinctive body shape. Big body, round head, wings that have just that curl, that lift at the tip. And I was like, what is that? I knowing that it was an owl, wanting confirmation. And it landed on this wire and I just slowed way down. I put the hazards on and slowed down and we just watched it. And then it flew a little further and we went a little further and it landed again on the line. And it was so exciting and amazing. So to get the owl card is, it's just beautiful. It's just that the ringing of importance and meaning. It's that sense of like, there's really magic around me. The owl is a mysterious and otherworldly creature found in folklore from east to west. The white owl in this particular deck is the companion of the goddess Lakshmi and represents wealth, beauty, and good fortune. When the owl card appears, it's an omen that a boon or treasure is on the way. Yippee! Either in spiritual or material form. With owl wisdom on your side, you'll see and know exactly what to do with this boon, how it can further serve your dharma and bring abundance to the world. Trust that the wellspring of treasures is infinite. Okay? I think I love it. Wonderful. So first question, your answer is the owl. Abundance, clairvoyance, treasures. Now for your second question, let's ask the I Ching. Dear I Ching, what would you have us know about this moment now? And what would you have us know about this second question that we hold in our hearts? So as I ask the I Ching, if you would take a deep breath and relax into your body. And since we were talking so much about Christianity and fourth chakra, could you also just put your hand on your heart and relax into your heart? And maybe this question is, what does your heart want to know about right now? We get hexagram 38, opposing. What if the difference were not a threat? How could this tension be creative? If you can't see eye to eye, what can you see? Opposing describes irreducible differences, desires, motivations, and especially ways of seeing that diverge from one another. Opposing people see differently even when they're looking at the same scene. They are utterly strange to each other, as if they came from different planets. With an inner state of opposing, you contain mutually contradictory impulses, like two siblings under one roof, or see from two angles at once. You might see things not only for what they are, but also for what they mean, as if they were omens. In small affairs, this kind of difference of view means good fortune. And I'm just going to interject here. I would say that when I had that conversation with my friend, and we have different views, but we found real common ground in wanting a better world. And we were looking at it through different lenses, but we both ultimately want the same thing. And that's really interesting to kind of let go of that outer opposition and just listen to each other. I didn't go into, I know I talked about it a little bit and then I didn't go further into where did we go with that conversation, but I was just trying to point it out that I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea to talk and to be open. And also, believe what you want to believe and do what you want to do. And I just don't want my heart to close. So I'll read that again. In small affairs, this kind of difference of view means good fortune. It's a challenge, a source of comedy or creative stimulus. In matters of great personal importance, though, where people's sense of identity is threatened by a different way of seeing, it will stir up survival instincts and trigger conflict. And of course we see that. I see that in the world too. If you can scale matters down to small affairs, it becomes much easier to give space to both visions. I'm going to read another interpretation too. Opposition can be a profound learning experience when it leads to the understanding that differences do not have to create breakdowns. In fact, all apparently opposing forces highlight the unique qualities, the strengths as well as the weaknesses of each other. We commonly define sadness as opposite to joy, dark in opposition to light, death against life. But from a broader perspective, these qualities are two sides of the same coin, dual aspects of wholeness. In fact, each serves the other, adds spice to life, and creates a beauty that far exceeds the limitations set by rigid thinking. The intelligent approach to opposition is to first define a neutral ground, and then come together on it. It may be difficult to do so, but if you persevere, it will be more than worth the effort and can bring unexpected benefits. No matter how intolerable the situation may be, nothing is impossible once all parties are genuinely willing to give peace a chance. Difficulties in communication can always be overcome if there is a sincere desire to accomplish harmony. It might take time to restore balance, but trusting that it is possible and working towards that goal will ultimately deepen and strengthen the bonds between you. If differences can be aired in an atmosphere of respect, where each individual has plenty of space to express her thoughts and grievances without fear of judgment or retaliation, it's an improved situation for everyone. And we get changing line 1. One of the most puzzling manifestations of opposition arises when elements that naturally harmonize with one another have somehow become estranged. Whether this estrangement has come about because of a misunderstanding or because of external forces beyond your control, avoid the temptation to try to force a happy reunion. The better course is to trust in the wisdom of nature, knowing that that which really belongs together will reunite in its own time. And that's a little how I felt with this friend of mine, that we have much, much more in common than we don't. And we're both looking for the same end result and thinking it will come about in different ways. And for me, and I can rest in my heart that that's okay, that we have different ways of looking for and towards the future. Anyway, that's what I came out of the conversation with, and it was quite peaceful. The hexagram moves to 64, not yet across. 64 is the last hexagram in the I Ching, so that's always interesting to get that one. And it has some fox imagery, which I think is kind of sweet. How to prepare for the crossing. How will you know when it's time? I think this is an appropriate hexagram to get at this time of year. As we begin December and move through, I love Advent, so December 1st is the first day of Advent, and we move down towards solstice and the turning of the light, the coming back to the light, which is really joyful. Not yet across, creating success. The small fox, almost across, soaks its tail. No direction bears fruit. Here at the very end of the I Ching, nothing is settled or complete. Everything is in flux. A wise fox will only attempt to cross when there's solid ice on the river, and then pick his way over carefully, every sense alert. If he sets out when the conditions are not right, he won't be able to complete the crossing. He'll be shamed and stranded at best, and he may be altogether sunk. For a small fox on drifting ice in midstream, there is no useful direction. When you are not yet across, you may be hesitating on the verge of a transition. I think we all are. That's in parentheses. Trying to tell whether it's safe to commit yourself. It's time to use the skills of a wise fox. And since fox is showing up, let's just get the fox card, because I know it's right here in the deck. The fox is an enchanting creature with plenty of mystique to go around. Fox personalities are skillful in business and also make great teachers. They are quick to learn about and adapt well to new situations. Foxes are ideal life partners as they commit to relationships for the long term, and their natural charisma keeps things exciting. Fox energy helps us stay true to those most dear to us. When this card appears, reconnect to those you love. Foxes don't do well when they slip away. So, I would say, what is it that's most dear to you? And this is a perfect time of year to think about that. As we go into this holiday season and we feel the stress of needing to buy gifts for each other, I wonder if we can just know, like the list of 50 words that are in our ecosystems, who are the people that are the web of your heart? And could you just maybe make a list in your mind of those people, or feel that, and let yourself rest in that web of love, of the way that your heart reaches out to other people and hangs on or holds hands with them. Because as we go into this crossing, 64, not yet across, looking into the void, we need to know that we're also held, that our heart holds us to other hearts, and that we are connected. And finally, we have arrived at the last question. Maybe even thinking about questions has gotten you closer to that underneath sense of questions, of wondering around. And I'm going to give you a little treat. This is when you are a student of asking questions, as I think I am. It's often advised, it's like junk food, to ask for a yes or no question, but you can go to your whatever, you can go online and ask a yes or no question, which I'm doing right now. They're yes or no generators. And I just think that it's really fun every once in a while to pick yes or no and let chance give you a clear yes or no. So right now, think of a question as big or small as you want that actually does have a yes or no question. So we can sort of satisfy that desire. So you got it? It can be really simple or it can be really big. But yes or no question. And here we go. Are you ready for it? I'm spinning the wheel. Yes or no? Okay, we got the answer. The answer is no. I hope you're not disappointed. I think that's part of the reason I love not having yes or no questions, because you can spin it any way that you want. You can tell yourself that it's going this way or that way, and you can feel your own feelings about the questions that you have, where yes or no, it gives you that kind of immediate sense of like relief or disappointment or yes or yeah. It's just a little bit cheap, you know? So I'm going to give you a little bit of a medicine after the yes or no question. I'm going to pull one more card. And this is the Healing Mantra deck. But two cards came out really close to each other. Aww. And I got Processing Grief. My losses prove how deeply I loved. And Rewiring the Nervous System. I find strength in surviving my traumas. Yeah. Okay. So my losses prove how deeply I loved, and I find strength in surviving my traumas. Okay. So that gets us through to the end. We did it. This is your new moon. Rest in the dark. Let the dark wash over you. You know, I would even suggest, if you get chances to be like not just asleep in the dark, but be awake in the dark, gaze at the stars, maybe have a walk as the moon starts to come back for us these 2 weeks. Maybe you have a night walk, because like, frankly, you can do that at 5:00 at night. It's so dark. But night walks and just letting the night wash over you, be nourished by this dark. Don't push it away. It is something to be celebrated, and this is quite a fun time to celebrate, is it not? So we've got this beautiful full moon coming, and it is going to be on, does anybody know? There we go. It's going to be the Sunday before solstice. We'll have this full moon, and that's going to be a lovely time. I don't know. I can't even imagine where we will be. Every 2 weeks feels to me like these giant leaps that we're taking. And it's so funny to me because it's like a giant leap and nothing's happening. I don't know what I can point to that feels like a giant leap. I feel like every 2 weeks, I'm feeling like I'm in such a different place in my mind, in my thinking, in my emotions. I feel so different right now than I did 2 weeks ago. Okay. That's it for us for tonight, for now. Thank you so much for being here and listening with me. You can always find me through my website, www.annhedley.com. That's ANNHEDLY.com. You can support me on Patreon, www.patreon.com/watermoonstudios. And you can find me on Instagram at Ann Hedley. These podcasts are also on YouTube if you wanted to. It's not a video, but you can listen to it on YouTube. And that's also, youtube.com/Ann Hedley. I should know. Thank you so much for being here with me. May you be well, and may you know peace. And may all beings everywhere, whether known to me or unknown, know peace. And may they be well. Bye for now.